Melody Shari was never going to stay silent for long. For weeks, rumors continued to build, interviews hinted at betrayal, and social media posts seemed filled with hidden messages. At the center of it all stood her ex-husband, Martell Holt, who appeared determined to present the story from his perspective. But instead of reacting emotionally, Melody chose to respond in a way no one expected. What followed was not just reality TV drama, but a major shift in how the public viewed everything. Long before headlines and online debates, Melody's journey was relatable to many. She worked hard to build her life, balancing motherhood, marriage, and business. When she first appeared on Love and Marriage Huntsville, viewers saw a woman who seemed to have a strong marriage, a growing brand, and a happy family. However, as often happens, what looked perfect on screen was more complicated behind closed doors. There were disagreements about trusts, priorities, and respect. Melody wanted stability and long-term security for her children, while Martell appeared more focused on image and control. As their marriage struggled publicly, viewers watched emotional arguments and attempts at reconciliation. But what was not always visible was the exhaustion Melody carried while managing motherhood under public scrutiny. When the divorce was finalized, many assumed the conflict would end, yet it opened another chapter filled with tension and legal challenges. Melody focused on rebuilding her life, investing in her businesses, her music, and most importantly, her children. However, as she moved forward, Martell began sharing his side more openly, suggesting that she prioritized fame over family. Online debates intensified as fans chose sides, but beyond public opinion were real decisions that could impact custody and the children's stability. Instead of responding with anger, Melody remained strategic. She documented her involvement in her children's daily lives, keeping records and maintaining stability. When it was time to defend herself, she relied on facts rather than emotional statements, showing that she was fully present as a mother while continuing to build her career. Gradually, public perception shifted. Her calm composure contrasted sharply with the ongoing accusations, and many began to view her resilience with greater respect. Although the pressure was heavy behind the scenes, especially knowing her children would one day see the headlines, Melody used that weight as motivation to model strength and honesty for them. Over time, the narrative changed. She was no longer seen only as a reality television personality, but as a woman who handled adversity with patience and focus. The situation ultimately became less about celebrity conflict and more about protecting one's name, one's peace, and one's children. In reclaiming her narrative through consistency and composure, Melody demonstrated that sometimes the strongest response is not the loudest one, but the steady commitment to truth and growth. As the situation continued to unfold, the contrast between Melody Shari and Martell Holt became even more noticeable. While public conversations kept circling around blame and accusations, Melody stayed focused on structure and stability. She kept showing up for school events, business meetings, and family responsibilities without turning every response into a public performance. That steady consistency slowly began to speak louder than any interview ever could. Supporters started pointing out that growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks quiet, disciplined, and intentional. The more she invested in her work and personal development, the clearer her priorities became. Through her continued presence on Love and Marriage Huntsville, viewers noticed a shift in her energy. She appeared more grounded, more protective of her boundaries, and less willing to engage in back-and-forth conflict. Instead of feeding into tension, she redirected attention toward her goals and her children's well-being. That approach didn't just protect her peace, it reshaped her image. Meanwhile, ongoing public commentary only highlighted the difference in strategy. Each new accusation seemed to lose impact because it was not met with chaos. Instead, it was met with calm confidence. Over time, people began recognizing that rebuilding after heartbreak requires more than strong words. It requires steady action. Melody's actions demonstrated that it is possible to heal publicly without turning pain into spectacle. In the end, this chapter became more than a failed marriage. It became a story about endurance, maturity, and the power of choosing restraint over reaction. By staying consistent and refusing to let negativity define her, Melody proved that protecting your reputation sometimes means stepping back, gathering your strength, and allowing your actions to correct the narrative. And as this journey continues, one thing is clear. Her story is no longer centered on conflict, but on growth, purpose, and the determination to move forward stronger than before. As time moved forward, Melody Shari continued to build a life that no longer revolved around defending herself. Instead of constantly addressing rumors connected to Martell Holt, she shifted her focus to expansion. Her businesses grew, her public appearances became more polished, and her message became clearer. Peace is a priority. Rather than allowing the past to define her, she used it as a lesson. Every challenge seemed to strengthen her boundaries and sharpen her vision for the future. Viewers of Love and Marriage Huntsville began noticing something different as well. Melody was no longer reacting to every comment or confrontation. She appeared intentional about what she shared and what she kept private. That balance between transparency and protection showed growth. She understood that while reality TV thrives on drama, real life requires stability, especially when children are involved. Behind the scenes, those closest to her noticed how much discipline it took to remain calm under pressure. It's easy to defend yourself loudly. It's harder to stay composed when your character is questioned publicly. But Melody chose the harder path. She protected her home life, limited unnecessary back-and-forth exchanges, and stayed focused on creating opportunities that would outlast temporary controversy. At the same time, the public conversation matured. Many supporters began reflecting on how quickly narratives can be shaped by emotion rather than evidence. They recognized that patience often reveals truth more clearly than arguments do. By refusing to engage in chaos, Melody allowed time to work in her favor. What once felt like a heated battle slowly transformed into a lesson about resilience. Most importantly, her children remained at the center of every decision. She understood that beyond social media and television headlines, they were watching how she handled conflict. Her strength was not just about public image. It was about modeling dignity, composure, and self-respect. In doing so, she turned a painful chapter into a powerful example. Now, instead of being defined by a broken marriage or ongoing tension, Melody's identity feels rooted in independence and growth. Her story continues to evolve, but the foundation is different. It's no longer about proving someone wrong. It's about proving to herself and her family that setbacks don't determine destiny. And if the journey so far has shown anything, it's this. Growth doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it happens quietly, through discipline, focus, and faith in your own truth. Melody didn't just survive the storm, she rebuilt after it. And as new chapters unfold, she appears more prepared than ever to move forward on her own terms. As this new phase of her life unfolds, Melody Shari seems more focused than ever on building a legacy rather than winning arguments. The noise that once surrounded her name has slowly faded into the background, replaced by achievements, partnerships, and personal growth. Instead of being pulled into repeated cycles of tension with Martell Holt, she appears intentional about conserving her energy for what truly matters: her children, her peace, and her long-term goals. On Love and Marriage Huntsville, viewers continue to see a woman who has learned from experience. There's a noticeable confidence in how she carries herself now. She speaks carefully, sets firm boundaries, and avoids unnecessary emotional exchanges. That growth reflects not just healing, but maturity. She understands that while reality TV thrives on drama, real life requires stability, especially when children are involved. At the same time, the broader audience gained perspective. What once seems like an ongoing public battle now looks like a lesson in restraint and resilience. Many recognize that strength is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's steady, patient, and unshaken. Melody's journey reflects that kind of strength, the kind built through experience rather than performance. Most importantly, her children remain her guiding force. Every decision appears rooted in providing them with stability and emotional security. By handling conflicts with dignity, she gives them an example of how to navigate challenges without losing self-respect. That may ultimately be her greatest victory, not public approval, but private peace. Looking ahead, her story feels less about what she endured and more about what she is creating. The focus has shifted from survival to expansion, from defense to development.